Hi everyone, welcome back to Leonid Live Lounge. I'm your host for today, Adam, Head of Forensics here at Leonid Group. I'm delighted to be joined for International Women's Day 2026 by Rebecca Rossiter. Rebecca is a partner at AlixPartners in London. She's a forensic accountant and investigator with over 20 years experience solving complex financial crimes. She's based in London, but has also lived and worked in New York and Paris. And I'm delighted to welcome her to the show today. Rebecca, how are you?
Thank you, Adam, for that nice introduction. I'm good.
Great to have you with us. Thank you for sparing a bit of time. I wonder if it's all right, maybe to kick off, to go back to the start and hear a little bit from you about how you first got into forensic accounting.
Yeah, of course. So I probably followed what many would consider like a typical route initially. So I did a maths degree at university. I ended up in a training contract to do audit and accounting. And probably so for the first 5 years or so of my career, that was it. I think after qualification, what happened is I had the opportunity to move abroad. So the Big Four were hiring because Sarbanes-Oxley had just come out. They needed lots of auditors in the US. And so I was one of the lucky few that had the opportunity to do that. And I moved out to New York, and honestly, I'm sure we'll come on to this more, but it was the most fantastic career opportunity I think I've had in my professional career. And again, I carried on in audit, but working for like one of the massive advertising agency audits. Um, and just what an experience, the people, the culture, everything. And I think it was whilst I was out there, I kind of decided that, maybe there's a life outside of audit. So I was looking around, and actually PwC had this exciting department called forensics, which I hadn't heard about before. And I spoke to a few people there, and it just sounded um, exciting. It sounded technical. You could use your skill set, but maybe there was a bit of thinking outside of the box. You never knew what industry you'd be working on. You never knew where you'd be working. And it just sounded exactly what I wanted at the time. So I moved into forensics there and had a fantastic few years there. Ended up coming back to London, working on, again, some massively high profile cases at PwC, the kind of stuff that you see in the news. I know like accounting doesn't always make the main headlines, but these are really some of like the biggest cases, the ones that go through the high courts, and are just such an opportunity. Um, and then I think, at a certain stage in life, you're sort of reevaluating things. And I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at what industry had to offer. So, again, just right place at the right time, an opportunity came to me, which was to work for Lafarge Holcim. It's part of their internal investigations team and actually working out of Paris. So again, I mean, um, how can you say no to that? So I was looking after Asia Pacific region investigations, working with a brilliant team of colleagues. Again, immersing myself in a different culture and just really going for it. So I had a fantastic couple of years there. And now I'm at AlixPartners. Been here for over 5 years, which has gone flown by. Started during COVID, so it was a slightly different world. Um, but again, doing some of the most complex, high profile investigations and kind of investigations that turn into disputes. So that kind of litigation support angle as well. Um, and I made partner here last year. So it's a kind of a whistle stop of how I got here.
Like you say, it's probably a reasonably common route to go in through financial audit and then ending up
Mm.
in forensics. But definitely, I think you used the word sort of a more exciting opportunity, and that's definitely what we see day to day with people that do make that transfer. I
Yeah.
think the other really exciting thing about your career, you definitely embraced opportunities to go and live and work abroad. Anyone connecting with me on LinkedIn will be bored at how often I bang on about the benefits of getting that international exposure, particularly for Brits who I don't know, for one reason or another, we just don't seem to embrace that as much as some other cultures. What are some of the maybe key things you learned or some of your best experiences that you had in either sort of New York or Paris in terms of how that's affected maybe your professional and personal development?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally get what you're saying, Adam. I think when when the New York opportunity came to me, I think in the first instance I thought, oh well, why would I do this? And now I look back and go, why would you not? I mean, what I think it's challenging from two perspectives, right? A professional career development perspective, because people work differently. You can speak the same language. It doesn't mean that you work the same way, act the same way. So much of my work now is about relationships, communication, even in the midst of an investigation. You're interviewing people, you're trying to understand what's gone on. It's not just about numbers. And so that kind of ability to work with different cultures, different people, you know, learn how to develop relationships, learn to be flexible, adaptable. It really does bring you all of that. It really does. So, from that professional perspective, I obviously got to do my qualification over in the US as well. That's fantastic. That's another thing to add to your CV. But it opens up and it broadens your network. I mean, it's what, 20 years since I moved to the US, and I am still in touch with many of the people, be they clients or friends, that I had contact with over there. And in fact, I think one of the lawyers I worked with on a case back in 2007 came to a dinner we organized last week for senior female leaders. So her career has also moved and diverted and gone in different places. I think that ability to network, because if we think about what forensics is and where our work comes from, it's really all about relationships.
Mm,
So there's nothing better than expanding your horizons in that way. And of course, even from a personal perspective, the opportunity to go and live in a different country and figure it out for yourself, because you obviously have some level of assistance, but there's a lot of things you just have to figure out. It's a personal challenge, but it's also a very kind of fulfilling challenge. um, I think every day is an achievement. And I would say, somewhere like France, when I moved there, for instance, obviously I was a little bit more senior, things were probably a bit easier, but the day to day, getting by, trying to learn a language, um, you have your ups and downs, but there's really nothing more fulfilling.
absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's something that, particularly in forensics, like you say, with those larger, complex international investigations, the chances are you're going to be working with people either from within your own firm's network who are in an office overseas, or more than likely the law firm or end client that you're working with, overseas counterpart. And having that understanding of how to approach different cultures, how to engage in that conversation,
Yeah.
you're so much richer for having that experience overseas, aren't you? You can then transfer into your forensics work.
Absolutely. And it does, I think it does set you apart. I say anyone with that kind of experience on their CV.
Yes,
I mean, I really do feel that every opportunity I've had and taken has opened that door a bit wider for the next one. And you never really know where life leads. And this can be quite an intense job. It can be all consuming at times, but it's very rewarding. It's so important that you enjoy it. So you've got to go take those things and figure out what it is that you enjoy about it.
absolutely. Speaking of big complex investigations and things, and thank you for the career overview as well. I wondered if maybe you could, are there any cases that come to mind or any projects that you worked on that maybe cemented that love of forensics for you either earlier on in your career, or things that you think have really impacted your career in a positive way, maybe particularly notable cases, or even if they're not newsworthy, just ones to you that were particularly interesting or challenging?
Yeah. I mean, a lot, honestly, a lot. I was trying to think of examples before this, and there really are so many. And I know I can't necessarily talk about names, but certainly when I was at PwC in London, one of the biggest cases I worked on, which was for a number of years, was, a multi-million, billion-dollar claim, essentially. It was one of the biggest cases that went through the UK courts at the time. And I think every aspect of that, so accounting fraud, um, looking at misconduct, working with lawyers, and seeing this like investigation through from the beginnings of well, maybe it's just a 2-week job and we just need a little idea of what's gone on, through to this like billion-dollar claim, and understanding all the pieces and how they fit together. Because we don't always see in the investigations world, we don't necessarily see investigations and how they flow through that process into a dispute. We might do an
Mm,
investigation, company takes it away, does the remediation, that's done. But this way you can see how it develops. You're thinking about the strategy, what are the facts, what other information might you need, um, assisting on the accounting questions when it comes to interviewing um, key relevant individuals, and then seeing the process through the courts and how that all plays out is just
mm.
fascinating. So, you know, th- that kind of case is ones that really think, if I look back on my career, that's probably going to be the case that I think to. But, there's so many others. The smaller cases can have this impact. They don't need to be the headline grabbing ones. I think to New York, we did something in the construction industry. There was a whole series of whistleblower allegations. And my goodness, you learn a lot about the New York construction industry. It's an entirely different beast. So there's always like learning opportunities. You come across new industries, be it, a fraud or asset misappropriate, whatever it is, like you are always learning something new and probably fairly niche from an accounting perspective.
That's some really common feedback I get from people in the sector, is that they really enjoy that. More often than not, you're quite sector agnostic, right? You might be working on a, oil and gas pipeline dispute in Azerbaijan one week, and then a, Wall Street high finance Ponzi scheme the next. And you've always got that ability, maybe compared to what most people think of accounting, sort of external audit, where you've got, maybe one or two clients that you revisit year after year after year. You've got so much variety
Yeah.
in the course of any given year in forensics, which is great.
And you just named a few countries there just off the top of your head, the travel opportunities and places that you might visit that don't necessarily go to on holiday, that's also there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lots of stamps in the passport. Always good as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. Um, you mentioned when you were sort of running through your career, of course, making partner at AlixPartners in sort of in your recent history, um, which I think a great milestone to reach in one's career. It's still so competitive and difficult to make partner at a big firm. So great to do. I think when I speak to people at maybe say the senior manager or director grade, they've committed to a career in forensics. They're not going off to be, FP&A analysts in industry anytime soon. They know they want to be a forensic accountant. They know that is the ultimate career goal. I mean, it's quite often seen as a really big step to go from, 8, 9, 10 years of learning all of the technical delivery side, how to be a good accountant, how to conduct an investigation, how to draft memos for disputes, whatever it may be, to all of a sudden, as you get towards partnership, that need to be a networker, to be generating revenue. It's almost, you spend 10, 15 years building a skill set, which is almost then not really everything you need in the end job. And a lot of people, I think, find that to be one of the really big challenges. Was there anything sort of along the way that helped you prepare for taking that step?
Mm, yeah. Well, you're right. It is one of those. It well, it can seem one of those big challenges, and I think the words business development mean different things to different people. And certainly, when I was more junior in my career, it probably I was thinking pitches and proposals and speaking in front of people and having to create something new and unique to sell. And, I think if you step back and think about it, that's not really what we do a whole lot of the time. I mean, most of our work comes from people that we have built just really good relationships with. Um, you work a lot of your day, so you want to like the people you work with. They want to like who they work with. So really, it's, for me, business development, and certainly in the forensics field, is more about just creating relationships. So if you kind of start to think of it more like that and, less worrisome ways, um, it should start early. And, tips and tricks. I mean, I don't know that I have many, but have a coffee with someone that you might like, go meet a lawyer for a drink. That's business development. And if you start early in your career, you are kind of growing through your career at the same rate as they are. When they become more senior, they will be the work givers. It kind of rolls in that way. So I would just say, don't be afraid. Um, you know, buddy up if you want to as well. Other people, everyone has this fear. Everyone. I've definitely had this fear. So, bring other people into it as well. Networks are also a great way of just making those connections. And I'm sure we'll speak about networks as well, Adam. But, you know, um, it, that's all it is. It's
Yep.
not rocket science. It's just listen to them, talk about what you do, um, and just see where that takes you.
I think there's a really good bit of advice in there, which is, finding people at your level, start early, something you just said, which I absolutely tend to find with people that have made partner. That's quite a common trait. They've realized that, manager, senior manager, director level, that they want to be a partner one day. And you sort of realize you don't want to wait until you're a partner to then be trying to make connections with everyone else that's just made partner at law firms or just become counsel in house. Like you
Yeah.
say, if you're a couple of years into your career, there are equivalent lawyers a couple of years into their career who you're likely to sort of rise up at the same time, right? And if you build those relationships early, and then it's the old saying, like, people buy from people they like, so you build the relationship early. Um,
And that is really all it is. We're talking about relationship building because you're not going to go meet someone as a partner, as a junior one day, have that one meeting, and then they'll say, yes, please come and do this job for me. The world doesn't work like that, right? So it is about sort of sustained building of relationship. Things will follow after that, it's, but, it's not as hard as I think the fear can be in people's minds.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you often find in your role now that you're back at a consultancy that your experience working in-house, as you mentioned earlier, you were an internal investigator at Lafarge Holcim, so you're based out of Paris but covering APAC.
Mhm.
Does that experience still feed into your consultancy life day to day?
Yeah, of course. As I said, I mean, I think honestly, I think everything in your life has an impact on every next bit of your life. But I suppose the things that I probably took from that, and part of the reason I wanted to make that move was to understand how the corporates themselves viewed these kind of issues and investigations, how they dealt with the issues, what they did after you've handed a report over to them, and seen what's happened. And I think it probably puts you more in the shoes of um, the key stakeholders that are
Mm.
part of that investigation on the inside of the firm. And I think if it can put you in their minds, you can think about what's important to them. You just get a better appreciation of it. So when you're writing your investigation report, back at AlixPartners, you can be thinking, what is it they need to hear? What's going to be helpful to them? What else can we do? And it just helps you not only shape the report, but really shape that whole structure of the investigation. When you're scoping it out at the beginning, you know, it's not just steps A, B, C. Maybe they need, I don't know, what's the follow on? What's the remediation? What else could we do um, to support them? And that's it, really.
Mm. I can definitely see the benefits there. What you mentioned about knowing what it is like to be the client. What steps
Mm.
do they follow after the initial investigation or the report has been handed in? And maybe sometimes that is a constraint. I think for some people that have spent their entire career in a consultancy or an accountancy firm that have never gone and seen that real impact that being in-house has. Um, so yeah, I thought it's worth bringing up because I know it's a point a lot of candidates will raise to me, maybe people between sort of senior associate and senior manager level thinking, is it worth getting a couple of years experience in-house doing that sort of whether it's ethics, compliance, investigation, sometimes even something like internal audit, just something that
Yeah.
gives them a bit of a different CV from sort of the standard management consultant, as it were.
Yeah. I mean, again, I see lots of value to it, right? It's another experience. It differentiates you a little bit more. It possibly puts you in a better position if you do decide to come back into the consulting world, because you can be seen to have had some of that experience. But, I'm a real proponent of nothing is ever a bad experience. You learn from everything that you do. So I would just say yes, you know.
I completely agree with that. Um, You mentioned earlier as well that we'll get onto networking groups and things like that.
Mhm.
And yes, I definitely think that's well worth covering. You've been involved, I think, for a little while with the Female Fraud Forum, right? And I know you're a member of a couple of other ERE and Women White Collar Defence Network and other groups as well. Um, as it is International Women's Day, as this goes out, although clearly recorded ahead of time, but as it's going out on International Women's Day, I think it would be great to cover maybe some of the benefits you've got as a member, but also I guess maybe for people that might be a little bit on the fence, particularly those that are not natural networkers and maybe don't know how easy it is to turn up to an event organized by one of these networking groups. Maybe if you could give a little bit of a context, maybe around when you first started getting involved in them and maybe some of the benefits and things that you've seen since you've joined.
Yeah. And firstly, I would say all these groups, all these networks are so welcoming. Like, they're so keen to have new members, new insights. Like, no one should ever be worried about whether this is right for me. Um, yeah, so the Female Fraud Forum I've been involved in for a few years, either as just an attendee, and in the last year I'm actually on the committee. I'm the treasurer of Female Fraud Forum. So this network in particular, um, yes, it's got female in the title, but it's females and allies in the sort of fraud area. So we have consultants, lawyers, barristers. We have a whole range of professionals that join. We do educational events, we do social events. So there's a bit of something for everyone. To me, the benefits and why I first joined were it's a whole range of grades as well. So you can join from, your first year in whatever world that you sit in. You should feel free to come up through partner. It was for everyone. It's such a great way, again, of just expanding your network. So for me personally, when I came back from Paris, um, my network was big, but it wasn't in the UK. Well, I didn't know people, and I knew I needed to do something about that. So obviously I had some contacts from PwC and so on, but really it was about looking at different ways of meeting people and just understanding what people are doing as well, right? What's the market like? What are the hot topics? What are you interested in? What work might I be interested in if I'm talking about this with you? And people are just a friendly, professional bunch. So I would encourage everyone to join the networks. Um, Similarly, you mentioned Women in White Collar Defence, run by a couple of the London chapters, run by a couple of brilliant people. Someone I used to work with, and one of the lawyers I know. Again, that will be slightly different. They'll do things like small group dinners, but again, it's just a way of like getting to know more people.
Mm.
Um, and it can be hard and intimidating. And without that, how else do you kind of go make your contacts? It's a slow build from doing each job that you do. This is a nice way of kind of immediately expanding.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a real resurgence in this at the moment. I think when I first got into recruitment 11, 12 years ago, face-to-face networking was still pretty pushed, both recruiters but also just professionals in their relevant sector. And I think then, we had obviously a couple of really difficult years with COVID where that just wasn't possible. And then Teams, Zoom, Google Hangout, whatever video platform of choice became the norm. And now I think almost everyone's quite sick of that and wanting to get back to meeting people in real life again.
Yeah, look, the virtual element definitely has its place. And as you say, in COVID, it was an absolute godsend, right? Because you're still talking to people, you're still seeing people. But y- y- without that human contact, how do you know if you really kind of connect to this person, do the same? There's not as much substance to it, I suppose. Yes, I think everything has its place, but I would entirely recommend meeting people in real life.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's a really useful tool, and you're going to have a far deeper, more meaningful relationship with someone that you meet in real life like that than you are by someone that you're just exchanging emails with or even having a phone call or the occasional Teams call with.
And I think there's a bit of, if you set up a Teams call, there's a little bit of pressure, like it's got a start time and end time. You're trying to figure out how you feel this time. you know, in real life, you can figure things out as you go. You can spend longer talking to someone. You can, spend less time talking to someone if you really don't want to. But it's if we think about again the way we work, how we work, it's all about relationships. So you're far better off trying to make that connection in person, is my view.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and it's great that there's now so many options available as well. We just didn't have
Mm.
this even a few years ago, right? Like you just mentioned, sort of three groups that you have attended events for or are helping to organize events for at the moment. You go back even 5 years ago, there just wasn't that much opportunity available, right? So it's
Yeah.
great people have got the opportunity to take that now, to come along. So we'll include the links for the website for all three down in the show notes in case
Thank
anyone listening is interested in
Joy.
joining. Yeah. I guess sort of final topic in line with International Women's Day, and I guess sort of think about maybe anything you've reflected on in your career. Um, it sort of really came to my mind recently. I was doing a initial search report for a client recently, and we always like to include any diversity data that we can find with our platform in the searches. And this was for, a big well-known accounting firm in a major US city and looking for partner MD level hires in forensics. And it's pretty shocking to find only 21% of the potential partners that we could be reaching out to were women. Um, Obviously the ERE, one of the networking groups you're just talking about, that in itself is to try and get sort of 50-50 in terms of representation for experts.
Mm.
But even just away from that, I was quite surprised to see how low the numbers were in a major metropolitan area, of a big country, of a big forensic market, to see, not even a quarter of the potential candidate pool were women.
Yeah.
Um, it's a topic on a lot of firms' minds at the moment. What can they do to try and drive inclusivity and to drive that equality across their partnerships? Is there anything maybe that you've learned throughout your career or any good steps you've seen either current or previous employers take that you think might be worth just sharing for people to mull over if their firm is having a sort of similar issue?
Yeah. I mean, this is a hard topic, right? And we've been talking about this, definitely since I was at school. And it's not just gender, is it? It's diversity of all forms that we can struggle with a bit. I think firstly, it's good that we're definitely talking about it more. I mean, it's a small step, but it's a really important step. I know here at AlixPartners, we're looking at sort of all elements across our firm. So recruitment, inclusion, as you say, why do people leave? How do we make people stay? And yeah, and the retention piece. And it's a challenging problem. I mean, something like the ERE, which is the pledge to get more females into being expert witnesses, it is a fantastic thing that has been set up. Um, some of the lawyers that I talk to when we talk about this say, what we do now is we make sure that we have at least one female expert in our list of recommendations when we give that to our clients. And without things like the ERE, that will have been less on people's minds potentially. I mean, the expert world is something that's tricky anyway. It's tricky for all genders to actually make their first step into. So we're not just talking about females really, but um, you know, part of that is just broadcasting the message. And, I think the world naturally changes and moves on a little bit as well, with things like shared parental leave, and you have um, males during their career taking off as much time as the females now. Things seem to sort of become more on a par. So hopefully if we have, this, I mean, I think a lot of firms have a good split at the junior level. They're doing things to keep and maintain that split, but it's just going to take a while to work its way through to partner level, of course. But I think awareness and talking about it, and talking to your colleagues, but talking to your clients. What do they do, and what do they want to see from us as well? There's nothing better than hearing it from the people that are the ones that want to give the work. That really makes you listen.
Yes.
So yeah, no, none of us have the answer, but the small baby steps are probably things that help.
Excellent. No, I take a big part of what you just said there. I think having an open conversation, an open dialogue about it seems really important. I know as external recruitment partners, we're trying to do our bit to help that along, as well. Rebecca, this has been so interesting. Thank you so much for giving some time up. Like I say, I'm going to include the links to all of the networking groups that we talked about below. Definitely encourage anyone that, like Rebecca said, even if you are a little bit introverted or shy, give these things a go, because everyone I've ever spoken to that's a member at any three of those says very welcoming atmospheres. It's definitely well worth checking out. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
It's been really great to chat, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks, everyone.